you a UK citizen that has lost their passport or had it stolen abroad and not sure what to do? In this video, I'm going to share my experience of when I was in Switzerland in October 2022 and our passport was lost. It actually got lost in the UK. I'll explain how in the video, but we thought that we would be okay to get back to the UK without having to apply for emergency documentation, and we were wrong. The mistake we made meant we had to pay for extra hotels, it meant we couldn't get on our flight home, and we had to book another flight. And it caused a lot of stress. In this video, I'm going to talk you through what we did, which I would not recommend, and share with you the learnings I've had. So if you're in the situation where you don't currently have your passport and you're abroad, then I'll give you the recommendations of what steps to follow and give you an indication of roughly how long it may take, because the government gives you an indication of how long it might take, but it was a lot faster for us. Let's get into it. Firstly, let's talk about how we lost our passport. I was on holiday with my sister in Switzerland. We flew to Geneva from Manchester Airport. After we'd shown our passports to get through the gate to get on the plane, we actually hadn't realised that the passports had fallen out of my bag on the way up the stairs to the aircraft. So it was only when we were in the air, an air steward came over and asked us, "Have you lost your passports?" And we were looking and couldn't find them. And so she gave us this message that was printed out from the cockpit for us from DHL ground crew saying that the passports had been found in Manchester Airport and that they were handed over to Border Force for safekeeping, and that they had contacted the Swiss authorities and that they would allow us to enter the country without any documentation. So I was super stressed, as you can imagine, at this point, because we were like, oh my gosh, how do we get them back? What's going on? But we felt a sense of comfort that they were being held by UK Border Force, and we thought, that's okay. Surely we can pick them up on the way home. So when we landed, we went to the passport control gates, and we explained to the guards that we didn't have our passports with us, that they were lost in the UK. And so they took us to this room behind a door, which had some cells in it, but we were taken to like an interview room. We showed them photographs of our passport on our phone and also the note. They took all our details down and they said we were okay to continue. So we asked, are we okay to come back out of Switzerland without any passport? And they just said yes to us. So I presumed that that would have meant it was okay. Now, we left the airport, went to the hotel, and I did start Googling to find out what the proper procedure was. And it said that if you lose a passport, it's stolen, you have to apply for emergency documentation. That usually takes 3 days, and you would then need to go and collect it from the consulate. We arrived on a Friday, and we were leaving on a Monday. So because I think it was 3 business days, I was like, oh, I don't even think even if we apply, it's going to be done in time. Because we were allowed to enter the country without documentation, I presumed that the Swiss border control would allow us to leave as well, because they know our passports are in the UK and we just need to collect them on the way back, as the slip said. When we arrived at the airport on the Monday evening to check into our flight, EasyJet would not allow us to check in without any passports or travel documentation. So we did try to speak to EasyJet on the phone, went through to the customer services, and I was waiting for the person I was speaking to speak to their supervisor and just kept getting put on hold. And I think we arrived at the check-in extra early because we knew there may be some issues. We ended up, after 2 or 3 hours on the phone, the check-in closed, and then it was pretty obvious we weren't going to be getting on that flight. So we booked a hotel at the airport in Geneva, at Ibis, I think it was, and started the application process to apply for the emergency documentation. So yeah, we went through the steps, and one of the first things it says to you when you go through the steps for this is if you continue, it's going to cancel your existing documentation, so it'll cancel your passport if you continue. In theory, that passport was null and void because we're not going to be able to pick it up. It's going to cancel it by applying for an emergency document, which we need to get home. So we did that, and also when we went through that process, we were asked what date we wanted it to start, because the emergency passport is only valid from a specific date for 14 days. So because it said 3 days, we said we want it to be valid from like 3 days from when we're applying, but actually we needed it as soon as possible. But I'll get to that in a bit when we get the documents. We also had to take pictures to submit as part of the application process, like a passport. We tried to do that in the hotel, but a lot of Ibis hotels have got a lot of colours on the walls, so it was difficult for us to get the right lighting. Even in the hotel room, it was too dark. So we had to go back into the airport to take the pictures for the passport. Once we then finally submitted the application, it was around 10 o'clock at night, and it was £100 per person to apply for this emergency documentation, but it was the only way we were going to be able to leave the country, so you don't really have a choice. The next morning, I woke up at about 8 o'clock and had breakfast, and I got a phone call from somebody in the UK who was processing the application, who was explaining to me that they were going to send the application over to the consulate in Switzerland, which was in Bern, and I would get an email from them confirming when they've received that and processed it, and when I'll be able to go and collect the emergency passport. We decided to get on a train, go to Bern, and we had an email from them at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's pretty quick, in the space of a couple of hours really, saying that the passport would be ready to collect the next day for both of us. So we booked a hotel that night in Bern, although there was the only one in the city, was like this extremely bougie, very nice hotel called the Hotel Schwitzdorf, Bern and Spa. It was very nice. The next morning we then got up, we had breakfast, and we then went to the consulate to collect our passport at 2 o'clock when it was open, and we got the documents. We were told that we could book any travel as soon as possible, because as soon as we hold the document it's valid. So we then looked for a flight we could get back, and the first flight that we could get was from Basel Airport, and that was going back to Manchester at 10 o'clock. So we managed to then get on the train to Basel from Bern. Basel is a very interesting airport because it's actually on the intersection of France, Germany and Switzerland. So it kind of serves all three countries, which was quite interesting and cool. We also managed to get into the lounge just before it shut, and get some food. And then, yes, our passports worked. The passports were really nice, actually. These little baby blue. The passports are really nice. When we got back to the UK, as soon as we landed and went to passport control, they take the passports off you. You're not allowed to keep them because they're only a temporary travel document that's allowed to be used for one journey. So that meant that they went in the bin. We asked them if they had our existing passports that DHL had said had been given to them for safekeeping. And the officer there said that if they get given anything like documents, like passports, they just shred them because they're not going to keep and store them for anybody. Once they're not in the holder of the person, they are classed as invalid in their eyes, so they will shred them. So it was interesting to learn that we were never going to be able to get them back. So, yeah. Did the insurance cover it? Now, we had travel insurance, and I asked travel insurance whether I would be able to apply for this. And I went through the process of submitting all the claims, and they came back to me to say that because the passports were lost inside the UK, it wasn't covered. The policy only covered any passports lost outside of the UK. So because they were lost on the way up the stairs to the plane, I couldn't claim for any of the hotels or the extra travel, like £100 to apply for the emergency documents, which was frustrating. So I'd say just check your terms. It's probably a very limited case of people that manage to lose a passport between the boarding gate and getting on the plane because it's such a small amount of time. So it's just one of those hard lessons I had to learn from this. If you do lose your passport, the thing I would recommend is go on the government website and start the process as soon as possible, because the sooner you start that process, the faster it's going to be you're going to get your documentation you need. If you wait, it could mean you end up having to pay for extra accommodation because you may not get it until 2-3 days, but we did find it came through within 24 hours, 36 hours from when we applied. You're going to need to have that documentation to leave. Let me know in the comments below if you've experienced something similar. I don't know if anyone will have, but yeah, let me know below, and there'll be a new travel video every Monday, so please subscribe. Thank you.